the facts or the core doctrinal teachings of the Buddhism, right? So within this subject, what we are going to learn is what facts help Buddhism to expand widely within the India during the 6th century BCE, right? So let's look at what your lecture note talks about the Buddhism, right? So now we are in the 6th century BCE, right? So when we talk about the 6th century BCE, within the India, there were plenty, as I indicated you earlier, as we talked earlier, there were hundreds and thousands of religious doctrines appeared during the 6th century BCE, because we learned the fact that the society was divided into several hierarchies, right? So due to that fact, most of the people who belong to the lower classes really they ill-treated, right? So they did not get equal rights as the people who were there within the higher layers, right? So due to that fact, people wanted to have some equality within the society. Therefore, they wanted to grab or to embrace some new doctrinal teachings. They wanted to have their own religion. Within the Brahminic culture, according to their teachings, the lower level people, especially Shudras, they did not actually even they did not allow to listen those chantings and all, right? So they were ill-treated. This is the fact why the many religious teachers came up with new ideas during the 6th century BC. That is the main reason why we could see introducing plenty of religions during the 6th century BC at this time, right? So it was like a beehive where many religious teachers attempted to come up with their own doctrinal teachings, right? So they wanted to introduce their religions, and by those religions, they wanted to provide remedies. They wanted to provide answers for the questions or the problems which were faced by the people at that time, right? So if you go through the main 6 contemporary teachers and their doctrines very quickly, as we have already learned about that. 1 minute. Right. So, if you talk about the 6 contemporary teachers to the Buddha, the first teacher that we talked about is the Makkariputta Gosala. There were several names to identify Makkariputta Gosala, Mascarinputta Gosala, Mascariputta, right? So, hope you can remember, right? So, he was the teacher of the Ajivaka tradition, right? He was the teacher of the Ajivaka tradition. Within the Ajivaka tradition, they basically talked about the fatalism and predeterminism, right? So fatalism and predeterminism. And the second teacher, another teacher, one of the 6 contemporary teachers we talked about is the Ajita Kesa Kambali. Ajit Kesa Kambali, he was into the Lokayatas or Charvakas, right? So Charvaka is another subdivision within the Lokayatas, right? So within the Lokayatas tradition, they believed in materialism or the finality of the specific world or worldly life, and they rejected all the notions of the afterlife. They only believed the things which are happening about this worldly life, right? Then the Pakuda Kachayana was another contemporary teacher to the Buddha, Sasvatavadins, right? So they were externalists. They believed in externalists, right? So they talked about 7 basic elements where the and everything was built up with 7 basic elements. That's how they believed: earth, water, fire, air, joy, sorrow, and life, right? They were externalists. And the another teacher was Purna Kassapa. Purna Kassapa, Ahetuvadins. Ahayatuvadins, right? So Purna Kassapa and the Ahayatuvadins, they believed in actions provide no results. No action would provide no or make no results, right? So they identified or treated body and soul are two different things, two different things, right? They were the Ahayatuvadins. And the another main teacher to Buddha was Sanjay Belatthiputta. Sanjay Belatthiputta, and the doctrine or the uh, was the Ajnanis. They identified as Ajnanis, right? So in indeterminism, right? So they practiced indeterminism, and they believed that it is difficult to the Sanjay Belatthiputta. He believed that he and his followers believed that it is difficult to gain knowledge on metaphysical nature, right? So we discussed about this before uh, during the last lecture, right? So Sanjay Belatthiputta, he believed that it is difficult to gain the knowledge on metaphysical nature, and even though one person could gain the knowledge of the metaphysical nature, it won't contribute to the final salvation, right? So that is how he believed, and uh, they did not produce a religious thought or doctrinal facts, and what they did was they keep refusing all the doctrinal teachings which are described by the other teachers, right? They did not produce any religious facts, and they keep refusing the other doctrinal facts which were introduced by the other teachers. And finally, the Mahavira, who was the teacher of the Jainism, right? So they practiced external austerities, external nature of the life and soul, and self-mortification. They practiced self-mortification practices in a very severe manner, right? In a very serious manner. But Jainism is also have some similar characteristics, such to the Buddhism as well. We will be discussing the similarities and the differences between Buddhism and Jainism after this topic. Once we finish the topic Buddhism, we will be discussing the similarities and dissimilarities in between the Buddhism and Jainism, right? So Buddhism is prevailing today, Jainism also, right? So almost all the other religions were disappeared throughout the time, but Buddhism still prevailing all over the world. So as the Jainism, it is not prevalent much as the Buddhism, but still there are many Jain temples are available within some parts of the India as well as some countries, right? Right. So those are the six. That is a quick recap to what we learned about the six contemporary teachers, right? So again, back to the our main topic, Buddhism, right? So even though these religions had followers, right? So these religions during the 6th century BCE, each and every of these religion, they had a group of followers. They had group of followers, but most of the people were not satisfied with the doctrinal teachings of these six contemporary religions. Most of the people were not satisfied with these doctrinal teachings because they did not, even though they teach very several things, right? So they did not address the problems which were faced by the actual problems which were faced by the people, right? Due to that fact, people were not satisfied with the contents of these religions, right? People wanted to, they were eager to, they were yearning to embrace a more realistic, effective, and practical doctrine, right? So due to this fact, hence the Buddha's advent and his religious doctrine was mostly welcomed by the people during the 6th century BC. Among all these religions, Buddha's doctrine was warmly welcomed by the people during this period, right? So if you talk about the Buddha, right? So we are not going to talk everything about the Buddha in detail. Rather, if we have a basic introduction. Hope you all know about Buddha, right? So Buddha's name Siddhartha Gautama, right? So who was the father and mother?
Suddhodana.
King Suddhodana was the father, and
Maya.
Yes, very good. Queen Mahamaya was the mother, right? So he was belonged to the Sakya or the Kshatriya uh, caste and class, right? So since his childhood, since Siddhartha's childhood, he had a very humanistic and spiritual outlook. He had a very humanistic and spiritual outlook, and the Siddhartha Gautama was married to Princess Yashodhara, right? So, and had a son Rahula, right? So at the age of 29, Buddha realized that all the men, all the people, all the living beings are subject to old age, sickness, and death, right? Where he finally identified the fact that human life is full of suffering. He finally identified the fact that the human life is full of suffering, right? So how he came to know about these things, right? Due to the foresights, he saw when visiting his kingdom, right? So the earlier when he was born, there are many predictors at that time in India. Almost all the predictors predicted that Siddhartha Gautama would be either a Buddha or enlightened one or a great king, right? So due to this, but the King Suddhodana always wanted to make his son the great king, not an entitled one. Therefore, he always tried to hide all the actual truth from the Siddhartha Gautama, right? So therefore, he had no idea about the sufferings and actual truth of the human life. But suddenly, one day, he encountered the foresights when he was in a round of his kingdom, walking around of his visiting his when he was visiting his kingdom, right? So what are the foresights? An old man, a person afflicted with sickness, a corpse or a dead body, right? A died person, and a wandering ascetic, right? So those are the four sites encountered by the Siddhartha Gautama, and that is the very first time he encountered such sites, because earlier he had no idea about sufferings, deaths, getting illness, right? So he had no idea about the actual life, right? So therefore, what he wanted to solve these matters, he wanted to learn the actual truth behind the human life by himself, right? So due to this fact, he renounced everything at the age of 29. uh, um, Obviously on the day of where his son was born, right? On the birthday of the Rahula, he renounced everything. He had a very luxurious life. He had a gorgeous wife, Princess Yashodhara, and he had a great family, right? So the King Suddhodana, Queen Prajapati, right? So he had a strong family. What he did was he wanted to find the actual truth of the life. Thereby, what he did was he renounced everything. His newborn son, he left his newborn son with his wife, and he left everything behind to find the actual truth of the life, to find the actual truth of the life, right? So then when he was in the process of finding the truth, he had to follow some teachers, he had to follow some teachers, and he learned doctrinal facts of several teachers, right? So some of the teachers were Alara Kalama and Udakarama Putta were some of the teachers, two main teachers of the Siddhartha Gautama when he was looking for the actual truth. Right? So Siddhartha Gautama could grab or learn all the doctrinal facts which were there within the Alara Kalama and Udakarama Putta, but he could not find the actual truth what he was looking for within their doctrines, right? Within the doctrines of Alara Kalama and Udakarama Putta. And what Siddhartha Gautama did was he abandoned, he left those teachers, Alara Kalama and Udakarama Putta respectively, right? So he left those teachers and he started practicing severe austerities and extreme self-mortifications for nearly 6 years. Right? So during the 6th century BCE, most of the teachers and most of the ascetics believed that in order to find the truth of the life, it was the best way is to practice severe austerities or self-mortification, right? So it was very prevalent to practice self-mortifications and extreme austerities to gain the actual truth of the life, right? So what Siddhartha Gautama did was he also practiced the self-mortifications and severe austerities for nearly 6 years, right? So but he could not, through those self-mortifications or severe austerities, he could not find what he was looking for, right? So what Siddhartha Gautama did was he gave up self-mortifications and the extreme austerities. He abandoned those specific practices, and he wanted to select his own path. He wanted to select his own path, which was the middle path, right? Which was the middle path, right? So what do we mean by middle path? It's a path between the worldly life or the luxury life and the extreme self-denial or extreme self mortifications or extreme austerities, right? So it is a middle path in between the luxury life and the extreme austerities, right? So Buddha chose his path, which is the middle path. That is Buddha's own path, right? That was Buddha's own path, which is the middle path, right? So and by practicing, by following the middle path, Buddha was able to attain the Buddhahood or enlightenment, right? So Buddha could attain the Buddhahood or enlightenment under the banyan or bodhi tree, right? So and during the Buddha's lifetime, Buddha did a great missionary service throughout the India, and we learned the fact that Buddha visited Sri Lanka as well to expand his or to give his doctrinal teachings to the world, right? So he had a great missionary practices to teach what he found to the other people, right? So we are not going to learn all the facts here, right? So then after that, Buddha at the age of 80, Buddha was passed away, or Parinibbana was occurred, right? And then we will come back to the doctrine Buddhism again, right? So teachings of Buddhism or the teachings of Buddha became popular and gave direction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So the teachings of Buddha gave a new direction to the people who were lived within the 6th century BCE, right? So Buddha had a good, proper idea about the human suffering, Buddha had a proper idea about human suffering in both psychological and societal dimensions, right? About the spiritual and secular spheres, right? Buddha had a proper understanding about the human suffering in psychological, societal, and he answered those problems in spiritual and secular spheres, right? So the what Buddha within his doctrine, what Buddha did was he analyzed these problems which were faced by the people during that time and presented the proper solutions to the world, right? So when we talk about the basic core of the specific religion is the Four Noble Truths, right? So the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, right? That is the basic doctrinal teaching of the Buddha, right? So what are the in order to answer the questions, in order to answer the problems or the human sufferings faced by the people at that time, Buddha introduced four noble truths. Buddha introduced four noble truths, right? So what are the four noble truths? Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, and Magga. Dukkha, Samudaya, Nirodha, and Magga. Dukkha is where suffering. Dukkha is where suffering. Samudaya is the reason for dukkha. Samudaya is the reason for dukkha. Nirodha is cessation or the ending dukkha, and Magga is the path to end dukkha, and within the Magga, Buddha introduced, in order to end the dukkha, Buddha introduced, advocated Noble Eightfold Path. Advocated or introduced Noble Eightfold Path, right? So what are the Noble Eightfold Path? Sammaditthi, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, and Samma Samadhi, right? So Sammaditthi is where the right understanding. Samma Sankappa is right thought. Samma Vacha, right speech. Samma Kammanta is the right action. Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. Samma Vayama, right effort. Samma Sati, right mindfulness. And Samma Samadhi is where the right concentration, right? So we have talked about these the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path earlier, right? So Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path could be identified as the basic core or the basic doctrinal teachings within the Buddhism, right? So apart from that, right, so there are several teachings and there are several uh, core doctrinal teachings within the Buddhism, and apart from that, basically, uh, actually simply there were Buddha laid stress on following two aspects, right? So very simple manner, Buddha laid stress on following aspects, right? So because all the core teachings or deep doctrinal facts are could not be understandable for all the people, right? So all the people within the society, uh, there is a hierarchy within the society, right? So some could grasp deep doctrinal facts easily, but all the people within the society do not have that ability to grasp or to understand the doctrinal facts easily, right? So different people have different abilities to grasp the doctrinal facts, right? So apart from these deep doctrinal facts, Buddha stressed upon the following very simple aspects, right? Where each and everyone, where the every people, all the people within the society, any person within the society could understand, right? So the Buddha emphasized on the spirit of love. Buddha emphasized on the spirit of love. He combined the ahimsa with love. Buddha always combined the ahimsa with love and expressed love, ahimsa to all the living beings, right? So this is not a some kind of different doctrinal teachings where anyone within the society could understand. Anybody within the society could understand, to spread love to all the living beings, to spread love to all the living beings, right? So being simple, right? So most of the doctrinal teachings, now when we were talking about the six contemporary teachers and their doctrinal teachings, they are not that simple. They are not that simple where where anybody within the society could not understand the doctrinal teachings which were introduced by those teachers, right? So obviously Buddhism is also a very deep religion, but Buddha emphasized on the simplicity, right? Apart from the deep doctrinal teachings, Buddha emphasized on the simple teachings where anybody could understand, right? So the another one aspect was the spirit of love. Spirit of love, Buddha taught, or Buddha asked the people to express the love to all the living beings by combining the ahimsa. And also Buddha wanted to people to pursue or to follow the middle path, and to avoid the severe asceticism and the luxury life, right? So middle path, not only to gain the spiritual advancements, but also within our any time, right? So not following, not attracting to the luxuries, not giving the our life or to body the severe denial practices. Rather we could go through a middle path, right? So basically Buddha stressed upon within his doctrine, Buddha stressed upon the spirit of love and the middle path, right? So these facts also led Buddhism to expand widely within the India, attract more and more followers to the religion, right? And also, teachings of Buddha put forward a serious challenge to the existing Brahminical ideas, right? So, if we talk about the Brahmanism, it was a very deep-rooted uh, uh, doctrine or the caste within the society at that time, right? So Buddha put forward serious challenge to the Brahminical teachings, which were deep rooted at that time, right? So the Buddha attacked the caste system. Buddha did not like the caste or class system or the hierarchy system, where Buddha directly rejected the class or caste system which were prevailed within the Brahminical society. And irrespective of caste and sex, if we talk about the Brahminical society, the men were treated in a very high level, but the women were not allowed to follow all the acts, so they did not allow to embrace religion. They had no right within the society. They were really ill treated. Not only the lower caste people, even the if we talk about the higher class people, the women who were belong to higher class people, higher castes, also they were also ill treated. Only men were treated in a high standard way. Rather, women who belonged to women within all the layers were ill treated, right? No matter the women belong to higher layer or a lower layer, they all were ill treated, right? So Buddha rejected the castes and class systems, and he provided a high priority to the women as well. Buddha provided high priority, high standard to the women as well, right? So despite or the irrespective of the caste and sex, all the people within the society were taken into the Buddhist order, right? Anyone within the society, either a man or a woman or a person who is belong to any class or any caste, were had the ability. They were free to join the Buddhist order, right? They were free to join the Buddhist order, right? So there was no need to have a priest or a middleman to achieve nirvana, right? So when we're talking about the, hope you can remember when we were discussing about the Brahminic, Brahmanism, there was a priest within the society for everything, right? So in order to do a sacrificial ceremony or whatever, the people should go for priests, right? That is why the Brahmins could gather more money. They had the strength within the society, right? But when it comes to the Buddhism, no priests or no middleman was required to enter into the Buddhist order or the dispensation, right? So the one person, if one person wanted to have the uh, ability, then they could achieve the nirvana or the ultimate goal, right? So no middleman is required to enter into the dispensation or to gain the to achieve the nirvana, right? And also, uh, apart from that, right, so Buddha rejected the caste system. Buddha gave a similar position to the women within the society, and anybody, despite of irrespective of the caste or sex or class system, all were had the ability to enter into the dispensation, and no middleman is required, no middleman or a priest is required to enter into the Buddhism. And also, when we talk about the Brahmanism, the Vedas, right? So we talked about there were thousands and hundreds of animal sacrifices were held at that time, right? So Buddha protested against the complicated and meaningless rituals, right? Buddha was against these meaningless and complicated animal sacrifices, right? Buddha wanted to, he stressed upon to spread love to all the living beings, including animals, not only for the human beings, but also to animals, right? So he rejected the animal sacrifices, right? So according to, when we were talking about the Vedas and Brahminical teachings, according to them, all the sin could be washed away with the prayers and sacrificial rituals. They believed that all the sin could be washed away with the prayers, with the prayers, right? So they, all the prayers and stanzas, they were meaningless, right? So and the by sacrificing animals, by sacrificing more and more animals, they believed that they could wash away the sin. They could wash away the sin, right? So but according to Buddha's teachings, no prayer, no priest could do any good to sinner, right? So nobody can wash away their sin by by practicing prayers or practicing sacrificial ceremonies, right? So if we take as a summary, a man was declared to be his own master, right? So responsible his own purity or impurity, right? So the person is responsible for his purity or impurity, right? So by practicing no sacrificial ceremonies, by practicing no prayers, nobody could wash away sin, right? Which they acted, right? So if now let's look at the special characteristics of Buddha and especially the Buddhism, which help to attract more and more followers to the uh, dispensation, and why the Buddhism was well expanded during the 6th century BCE, uh, when we compare with the other main 6 contemporary doctrines, right? So the basic thing, the basic fact is that Buddha possesses a commanding personality. Buddha possesses a commanding personality, charismatic spiritual attainments, and commanding personality and charismatic spiritual attainments, right? So we simply call it as Vijacharana, wisdom and compassion, right? So when we hope you all may know Itipiso Bhagava, within that specific stanza, it talks about the 9 qualities of Buddha. It talks about the 9 qualities of Buddha. Among them, the Vijjacharana is wisdom and compassion, right? So now let's look at the main characteristics or special characteristics of Buddha and Buddhism, which help to attract more and more people and to expand easily within the India and in other countries also, especially during the 6th century BCE. Right, so the very first characteristic that we could identify within the Buddhism is its openness. Its openness, right? So if we look at the Dhamma or the Buddhism, this specific doctrine, it is an explicate of Buddha. It represents the Buddha, right? So if you take the doctrine or the Buddhism, it is an explicate of Buddha, or else in other words we could say it represents the Buddha. Buddhism doctrine represents the Buddha, right? So you hope you may have heard the word Yathavadi Tathakari and Yathakari Tathavadi, right? So which means the Buddha practiced what he taught and taught what he practiced, right? Yathavadi Tathakari, Yathakari Tathavadi, right? So Buddha practiced what he taught and he taught what he practiced, right? It is one of the great quality that we could identify within the character of Buddha, right? So Buddha and religion Buddhism was given entire freedom. This is a main point which helped to attract more followers to the Buddhism within the 6th century BCE, right? So Buddha and the Buddhist religion was given entire freedom to its followers, right? Buddha always invited monks to investigate his religion, right? So if we take the other teachers, they wanted to follow their doctrine, but no matter whether they are correct or not, right? But when it comes to the Buddhism, this is one of the major point that we could highlight. Buddha wanted his followers to investigate his doctrine for the truth, right? Buddha invited monks to investigate his religion, his enlightenment, and he never wanted his followers to follow him because he was the enlightened one. Rather, he wanted his monks to investigate the facts or doctrinal facts of the Buddhism, right? So it is the openness, right? They had the freedom, the followers had the entire freedom within the dispensation, right? It is a major reason why the Buddhism was expanded within the India during the 6th century BCE. And the second point we will be discussing, I'm planning to discuss around 3 points, and the rest of the other points I'm planning to discuss within our next week lecture, right? So the first one is openness, right? So the Buddha wanted his followers to investigate his religion. And also when it comes to the Buddhism and the Buddha, the Buddhism, the doctrine Buddhism is an pure explicate of the Buddha. It purely represents the doctrine, purely represents the Buddha, right? So the Buddha always practiced what he taught and he taught what he practiced, right? So Yathavadi Tathakari, Yathakari Tathavadi, right? It is the main characteristic, openness. The second one is open to all castes. We have talked about this plenty of time, right? So the open to all castes, open to all castes, right? So the regardless of the castes, right? So during the 6th century BC, before the Buddha advocating his religion, we talked about this. The society was divided into several hierarchies according to the Brahminical thoughts, right? So, and the lower level people, they did not had any chance to follow a doctrine, to embrace a doctrine, right? So, but when it comes to the Buddhism, it was open to all the castes, right? Irrespective of the caste, Buddhism was all to all the people who were there within the society, right? So different castes or classes were treated differently during the Brahmins, and also we talked about this earlier. Women also given the high priority within the dispensation of Buddhism. Women also given a high priority within the dispensation of Buddhism, right? So in a sutta called Vasetta Sutta, under the Sutta Nipata, it has mentioned that Buddhism is open to all castes without any discrimination. Buddhism was open to all the classes and castes without any discrimination, right? So Buddha gave a new definition. Buddha gave a new definition to Brahmana, right? So the Brahminical tradition was there within the India at that time. Buddha gave a new definition to the Brahmana. The caste should declare or determine by the deeds or actions of a people, or the class or caste should be declared by the actions of a people, but not by birth, right? So earlier within the Brahminical order, according to the Brahminical order, people were divided into classes, divided into hierarchies based upon their birth, right? But according to the Buddha's teachings, he stressed upon that caste or class or the hierarchy should declare or determine by the deeds or the actions of the people, but not by the birth, right? Equality was well treated within the dispensation of Buddhism. Equality was well treated within the dispensation of Buddhism, right? So equal opportunities, no matter people come from what group or what class, all the equal opportunities were provided to all the monks who entered to the ordination. Once they are entered to the ordination, no discrimination was there. All were treated equally, right? So equal opportunities were given to all the monks who entered to the ordination, right? So he stressed upon to feel the brotherhood within the all the human beings, right? So the furthermore, renunciation and the practice of spiritual life could be adapted at any time within the religion of Buddhism, right? So when in other religions or doctrines, they have to pass some age to enter into the ordination, enter into the several doctrines. But when it comes to the Buddhism, uh, Buddha never treated considered the class, sex, and also Buddha never considered the age. Considered the age. At any age, person, if he has the willingness, then he is able to enter into the ordination at any age, right? No restrictions were there within the Buddhism, right? So the first one, what we talk about the characteristics, openness, and the Buddhism was open to all the classes and castes within the society. It was another characteristic why the Buddhism was prevalent, well expanded within the society, especially during the 6th century BCE, right? So the third characteristics, the final characteristic that we are going to talk tonight is the simplicity and the used dialect, right? So we learn the fact that simplicity, right? So there are many deep doctrinal facts within the Buddhism, but also uh, uh, there were simple doctrinal facts as well, where anybody within the society could understand, right? So the like ahimsa, spreading love, the following the middle path, likewise, right? So the Buddha, if you take the Buddhism, the dialect used to describe the doctrine Buddhism was the Pali, was the Pali, right? So the language which was used by the Brahmins was Sanskrit, right? So the Buddha never wanted to teach his doctrine or to illustrate his doctrine by using the Sanskrit language. Once a Sanskrit scholar wanted to translate Dhamma into the Sanskrit language, but Buddha rejected it because Sanskrit was the language which was used by the Brahmins, right? So the lower caste people were not allowed to, or they were forbidden to learning or hearing the recitations or the stanzas which were written in Sanskrit. Therefore, Buddha never wanted to illustrate his religion using the Sanskrit, right? So, thus, what Buddha did was he preached his Dhamma or his doctrine in a very common local dialect, which is the Pali language, which is the Pali language, right? So Pali language was the very commonly used language by almost all the people within the India at that time during the 6th century BCE. Right, so he taught his doctrine in Pali dialect with a simplicity made accessible to all the people, irrespective of their class or caste. Right, so if Buddha illustrated or Buddha taught his language in Sanskrit, then lower caste people, as being the Sanskrit was the Brahminical language, then the lower caste people would never be able to learn the Buddhist doctrinal facts as they were written or illustrated in the Sanskrit language. Thereby, what Buddha did was Buddha used the very simple or local dialect where anybody within the society could understand at that time, which was the Pali language, right? So, and also in order to expand more and more, in order to teach the specific doctrine to more and more people, we talked about this earlier, with the travel all around the India during his lifetime and accomplished a great missionary task, right? So during your diploma course, we discussed about Buddha's missionary activities, right? So Buddha used his lifetime in a very productive manner to for his missionary task to expand the Dhamma or the doctrine what he learned by himself, right? So the main characteristics, there are many around 7 to 8 characteristics about the Buddhism, why it was well prevalent or well expanded within the India. The first one is openness, and the second one is open to all castes, and the third one is the simplicity or the simple dialect or the Pali language, which was used by the Buddha to illustrate his religion. Right. So there are few other facts or the characteristics remaining. I'm planning to discuss it in our next lecture next week. Next week is next month, 2nd of August, right? So I'm planning to take your class on the next week, and we will be discussing the rest of the characteristics of the Buddhism, and we will be planning to discuss about the differences and similarities of the Buddhism and Jainism, right? So I'm not going to give you any homework tonight, right, as we have not yet completed the lesson, right? So go through the lesson, go through the lecture note, what we discussed so far, right? So and start studying, right? So as we have very few months remaining for your exams, right? So we will discuss questions in detail because we have very few topics remaining to discuss within the class, right? So once we finish them, we will start discussing questions, practice questions like revision class. Then we will answer the questions, right? So for that, start studying whenever you have a free time, right? So if you have any questions, email me, right? So start doing the graded assignment, right? So it should be, it must submitted by the deadline, right? Graded assignment, right? So then that's for today. Let's find up the lesson for tonight. Then thank you very much for joining with me. Stay safe. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.